Hello, I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is the novelization of Dawn of the Dead, which was written by George A. Romero and Susanna Sparrow. Now, this was published in 1978, the same year that the movie came out. Now, the film Dawn of the Dead, which this book is based on, was written and directed by George A. Romero, and the film was actually a sequel to George A. Romero's 1968 horror classic Night of the Living Dead, and both Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead are considered to be two of the most groundbreaking zombie films ever made, and they're really the zombie films that created the modern-day zombie genre. Now, there were zombie films before Night of the Living Dead, but Night of the Living Dead really did revolutionize the genre, and stuff like Resident Evil and The Walking Dead would not exist had it not been for Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Now, I'm typically not a reader of novelizations, but I figured I had to read this because Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorite movies, and I had to read this in honor of George A. Romero, who recently passed away. Now, one of the things I love so much about the movie Dawn of the Dead is not only is it a great horror film, but it's also a great political and social satire, and there's a lot of social commentary in that movie about consumerism and about how attached we become to material needs. Now, you get a lot of that same social commentary in the book as well. The movie is also very much a black comedy, but it's also very much a character drama as well, and the book, I would say, also has the same amount of social satire and character drama mixed in with the horror. And I have to say that this book is a pretty faithful adaptation of the movie. Now, I already did a review of the movie where I really got in-depth with the movie, and if you want to know more of my thoughts on the movie, just check out that review. Now, the plot of the novelization of Dawn of the Dead is the same plot line as the movie. It's about this phenomenon that's happening where the bodies of the recently dead are returning to life as these flesh-eating creatures, and anybody who is bitten by one of these undead creatures will die and then come back from the dead as one of them, and you realize that this is spreading like a plague across the entire country and possibly even across the entire planet, and because of this, human civilization is starting to collapse, or at least human civilization as we know it. And the story follows these four people, Fran, Steven, Roger, and Peter, as they hide out in this shopping mall as the world around them is falling apart. Now, because this book is a fairly faithful adaptation to the movie, there's really not much I can say about the social commentary in the book, because the book has the same social commentary as the film, and I already covered most of that when I did my review of the film, so story-wise and social commentary-wise, there's really not much to say about this story that I haven't already covered when I reviewed the movie. All I can really talk about is some of the differences between this book and the movie. Like, the book actually explores the backstories of the main characters and also really gets into the characters' psyches, something that the movie didn't really do, but also the movie really couldn't do because it was a film, and a book is able to actually do those things that a movie really can't. And I have to say, being such a big fan of the movie, because the movie Dawn of the Dead is a film that I really did grow up on, and it was really interesting reading about the backstories of each of the main characters that I didn't know watching the movie, and also getting into the characters' psyches a lot more was also really interesting, because this book has scenes right from the movie, but you actually get to see what the characters were thinking about during those scenes, and I thought that was really interesting. So it's the same story as the movie, but it offers kind of a different perspective in a way. Now, a lot of the dialogue in this book is just like it was in the movie. Some of it is a little different, which is understandable, and also I know a lot of the dialogue in the film was actually improv'd by the actors. Now, one thing that's not really a difference per se, but it's something that I think is a little more clearer in the book than it is in the movie, is you get a real sense that this crisis in some ways could have been averted if people would just listen to the scientists who were talking about all this and actually listen to what the scientists had to say. And obviously nobody really knew what was causing the dead to come back to life, but if people would actually stop being so stupid, basically, and stop relying on their emotions, maybe this crisis, like maybe this whole collapse of civilization that you see happen in this story could have been averted if people would just listen, but you realize that because people are so caught up in their own bullshit, it's what kind of lets this thing spread the way it does, and that's kind of what leads to with this whole collapse of civilization. And you sort of get that in the movie, but I feel like the commentary that Romero's trying to make is actually a little more clear in the book. Some other differences is there are certain scenes in the book that were not in the final cut of the movie, but I think might have been in the director's cut of the movie or something. Keep in mind that even though I grew up on this movie, I've only seen the theatrical version of Dawn of the Dead. I've never seen some of the other different cuts of the movie, so there are certain scenes that are in this book that were not in the cut of the movie that I'm familiar with, but maybe they were in, like, the director's cut or something. Another difference between the movie and the novelization is in the novelization, there's actually a pet store in the mall, and Fran ends up adopting a puppy, which was not in the movie at all. In fact, in the movie, you never even got the implication that there even was a pet store in this mall. And there are some other differences here and there, but for the most part, I would say this novelization is a fairly faithful adaptation to the film, and if you're a fan of the original Dawn of the Dead, I highly recommend trying to track down a copy of this novelization. It's definitely worth the read. So yeah, that was my review on the novelization of Dawn of the Dead by George A. Romero and Susanna Sparrow, and bye.